Today I'm going to be talking about this upcoming launch from Beaute Bar. This is their revamped Smoky Glam palette. So I'm going to be doing some detailed swatches for you, then I'll do a look for you, and at the end I'll give you my thoughts on the palette along with a detailed breakdown comparing this to the original Smoky Glam palette. Also, I always like to introduce myself. My name is Noopur and I love indie makeup and all things color and sparkle, and if you like sparkly eyeshadow and indie makeup and things like that, you're definitely in the right place. I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a like and consider subscribing. At least if you aren't already subscribed. And per usual, before we get too far into the video, I do want to disclose that I received this palette to do some paid swatches for Beaute Bar, so you'll be able to see those on the website on launch day, but I will also be showing them here in this video. And I'm also an affiliate with the brand. My code is Noopur, which will help you save a little bit at checkout, and I do get a small commission from that, so thank you so much if you use it. It really does help me out. But of course, I don't want you to feel like I'm pressuring you to purchase anything. These videos are simply here as a resource to help you understand everything you need to about the palette. So this palette is launching on Monday, May 5th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it will retail for $75, but it is code eligible. So even if you don't use my code, just make sure to use someone's code so you get that little bit of discount. Now let's get into some close-ups and swatches. Here's the cover of the palette. The font is in holographic foil on a simple background with a smoke graphic. Then here's the inside. The palette is magnetic with 11 mattes and 9 shimmers. 4 of the shimmers are duochromes and the remaining 5 are multichromes. Here are swatches of the entire palette all at once so you can see the whole color story. These are also the swatches that I did for the website. It's me again letting you know how I do my individual shimmer swatches. So I do a built up swatch up top and then a sheer swatch at the bottom, and then when I'm rotating my hand like this in front of the camera, I do it both in focus as well as out of focus so you can get a pretty good idea of what the eyeshadow looks like. Angel Eyes is a duochrome that has a very sheer peachy base and shifts from a more cool toned pink to a gold, but there's also the slightest dimensional quality to it without there being any visible multicolored sparkles. Though it is a duochrome, I see multiple shifts. It is slightly textured but smooths out easily. Milk Bath is an iridescent duochrome that looks off-white in the pan but actually has purple and gold sparkles. The purple has a finer particle size than the gold, giving it a super dimensional and sparkly finish. This one has a good amount of texture, so you have to be careful to not pick up too much. Playful is a duochrome that has a super sheer base and primarily shifts from pink to gold, but also has blue sparkles mixed in. It's a little similar to Angel Eyes, but it doesn't shift as much, though it does have those additional blue sparkles. It's a little textured but smooths out. Velvet Crush is the final duochrome. It has a warm berry base and shifts from a purple-leaning berry to a gold, but there are also additional blue sparkles mixed in. The blue sparkles really stand out against the base, making it super dimensional and sparkly. It has a little texture but smooths out well. Silk Teddy is the only holochrome in the palette. It has a deep base and shifts purple, pink, peach, and gold with those hollow sparkles mixed in. It is on the smoother side, but the hollow sparkles are a larger particle size compared to the rest of the shadow. It is a little hard pressed and took a few layers to build up. Pillow Fight has a sheer pink base with a ton of multicolored sparkles in it. I see pink, orange, gold, green, blue, and purple. Pretty much a full rainbow. It almost looks holographic even though it technically isn't. It's also ultra sparkly. It has a little texture but smooths out easily. Pink Diamonds has a purpley pink base and a reflect that shifts from gold to a soft teal. It's not a super strong shift and also the least shiny and sparkly shadow in the palette. It is very smooth with a small particle size. Hypnotic is a marbled pan. When mixed up, it has a purple base with a mix of silver and blue sparkles. The blue sparkles have a medium particle size, and the silver ones are larger and more textured, giving off a larger sequin-like sparkle. It is super foiled and metallic when built up. Platinum has a sheer base and multicolored sparkles. There's a layer of super fine, warm orange sparkles that shift to gold, and a layer of slightly larger blue sparkles that shift to a pinky purple. This one is on the smoother side and has that wet look sparkle. So I actually think that I want to do 2 looks, and I'm going to do one on each of my eyes just because I want to use as many mattes and shimmers as possible, and I'm thinking I'm going to do one look with the pink tones, and then I'm going to do the other look with some of these grayish tones at the bottom. For look number 1, I'm going to be starting with this pink matte over here. I'm going to run this through my crease. Beaute Bar mattes blend and build very nicely in small layers. Like, I've said this before, but I feel like sometimes with indies, like, they go on very pigmented, but then they're a little hard to blend out, but I don't find that to be the case with Beaute Bar mattes. Just adding a little bit more before I move on to the next step. I do really appreciate that this palette doesn't have like a bunch of ultra light pastel blending out shades, because I just feel like so many palettes have that, and I know that they're helpful for a lot of people, but I just like when there's a ton of palettes that always have those, it just gets like very repetitive. Also running the shade over here on my lower lash line, but not taking it all the way out yet. or at all really. Now I'm gonna pick up this fuchsia magenta type shade here. I don't know, people see colors differently and call them different things. And I'm gonna start building that over here in the outer corner area. This is a very strong shade, so I'm especially making sure to pick up very little of this bit by bit, because much like salt in cooking, you can always add, but you can't take away. I am also gonna bring it onto the lid a little bit. But now I'm gonna focus on blending it outwards and getting a good blend out here. I'm gonna go in with another deeper shade just a little bit over this to bring some smokiness to the look, but first I want to focus on blending this out. I wiped off the first brush that I went in with, and I'm going to use that to blend the edge of this. And I'm taking it a little further out than I usually do, just because I want it to be, I don't know, more dramatic, I guess. I'm taking the same shade on my lower lash line, and this time I'm filling in the area that I didn't put the first matte on. Blending over here to meet the first matte, but then also taking it into the outer corner to meet it there. Then I'm gonna dip into this shade over here to add that depth I was talking about. I'm gonna focus this over here, like onto my lid first, and then slowly start building it outwards. I don't want it to overtake the previous matte entirely, so I'm being very precise with this. And when I do that, I like to do tapping motions, that way I'm not spreading it by blending it. And then once I have it placed exactly where I want it to be, then I'll slowly blend it. Then taking that matte on a very, very small pointed pencil brush and running it extremely tight against my lower lash line and very much keeping it right here. This kind of berry blend is one of my favorites on my complexion. I feel like something about pinks that have a little bit of purple in them, I feel like those are my favorite types of pinks to wear. For my first shimmer, I want to use this shade over here. I'm gonna put this on the inner half of my eyelids. And I was so excited when I swatched this palette. I actually got this palette earlier today and I went right into swatching it and then filming this, and hopefully I'll get it uploaded tomorrow, which is the day you'll be watching it. I'm very much rushing this out because I want to get it up with enough time before launch. But this shimmer is so stunning. It's got so many different multicolored sparkles in it, but it's not quite an iridescent, so I feel like the colors of the sparkles stand out more than if it was truly an iridescent. But it almost looks holographic. It has that many different multicolored sparkles, but it's not actually holographic. There's only one holographic shade in the palette, and it's not this one. I'm gonna keep applying it until I cover about half of my lid and then feather it out into almost nothing. Actually, I think I'm gonna take it a little bit past the halfway mark, but not too much. Now I'm switching shimmers and I'm dipping into the actual holochrome shade, this one over here. This shade was a little hard pressed, which I noticed when I was swatching the palette, which is why I wanted to try picking it up on a brush. And you can see that it did pick up a good amount of pigment, but that was because I used quite a bit of pressure when I was picking it up. So just be aware of that. I'm gonna apply this right here on the very outermost portion of my eyelid. Get the bulk of the pigment off of my brush first, and then slowly feather it inwards. I felt like these two shades would work really well together because, like I said, this one is the actual holochrome and this one looks like it could be a holochrome, but it isn't. So I wanted to try pairing them together. For my inner corner, I'm gonna use this shade over here. Since this shade is a little textured, I'm just making sure to work in very small layers, even if that means I have to dip back into the pan a few times. This shade is so interesting because it really does look kind of just milky in the pan, but once you swatch it and get it on the skin, at least on my skin tone, I can see different colored sparkles in it. Like I see gold and purple right now. That's it for look number one for now until I get my mascara on at the end. So let's switch over to look number two. As I said before, I'm going to focus on these more neutral gray shades down here, and I'm going to start with this one over here. And I'm actually doing a soft wash of this over my entire lid. I think I picked up too little, hang on. This gray does have a pretty strong purple undertone, which I think makes it work really well with the other pink shades in this palette. Now that I've packed it on up to my crease, I'm actually gonna just use the tip of the brush to blend it out a little bit, but I'm not going to worry too much because I'm going to be using another shade in the crease. I'm also going to run this very lightly on my lower lash line, all the way out to the edge. Now I'm going to pick up this gray shade over here, but I'm also going to tap into this shade just a little bit. And I'm using this to blend out the first matte. I'm tucking it right into my crease and also taking it over here around the outer corner area. And then when there's almost nothing left on the brush, I'll move it in this direction. because I don't want it to get like too heavy right here. I tapped into both shades one more time, and I'm gonna go in again. This hair keeps getting in the way. But this time I'm focusing the pigment really over here on the outer edge, trying to create a little bit of smoke. And I'm slowly starting to blend it outwards as well. And now I'm going to dip into just this gray shade and work that into the very outer corner over here. And even bring it a bit onto the lid. And then some more blending per usual. Running just that deeper gray on my lower lash line as well, but keeping it focused towards the outer edge. I'm also dipping into this super deep charcoal over here. I tapped off my brush quite a bit because I don't want to go overboard with this, and I'm gonna put that right here at a diagonal angle close to my lash line. And blend, of course. Mix it in with that gray matte. So the reason that I put that purpley gray matte all over my lid is because I want to use this shimmer over here, which has quite a sheer base. I mean, I picked up quite a bit of it, so you're seeing some shadow over there, but it's quite sheer, so I just wanted something underneath it so it didn't look like it was just on my lid. I'm putting this pretty much all over my lid, and usually when I have this much matte shadow on my lid, I'll go in with a little bit of a glitter glue type product, but I feel like Beaute Bar eyeshadows are very creamy and a touch emollient, like not overly emollient, but they have enough emollients in them to where they will stick down even on top of matte shadows. Just switching to a brush to get where my nails won't let me go. Also using the brush to get the shadow up to my crease and to be a bit more precise over here on the outer edge. This shimmer is so beautiful and dimensional with multicolored sparkles. It really reminds me of one of the Shine by SD Sparkle Lights eyeshadows, if you're familiar with those. And for my inner corner on this side, I'm going to use this eyeshadow over here. I'm mirroring the placement that I did on my other eye, putting it here in the inner corner, as well as over here a little bit, and then swooping it upwards like this. I'm so sorry if the eyeshadow application on this eye looked a little off. I'm not used to filming from this angle, so it's a little difficult for me. Here are the final looks with the rest of my face on, and please ignore any mascara smudges you see along my lash line. I have not flaked them off yet because my mascara is not dry, but I am very happy with how these looks turned out. I think they're both very different from each other, and they show you a couple of different directions that you can take with this palette. But let me switch you over to the Sparkle Cam so you can see all of the magic. Here's the Sparkle Cam, which should hopefully bring out all of those multicolored sparkles that I was talking about. So this one has, you know, the blue sparkles over like warmer tones, and then this one on the inner portion of my lid has so many different colors that I really can't even make them all out. And I don't know if you can see the hollow in the darker shimmer that I have over here. I just can't really tell, you know, in my viewfinder, so I guess I'll find out when I review the footage, but I love both these looks so much. Now let's do some comparisons between the revamped Smokey Glam and the original. I'm going to be doing side-by-sides and swatches and all that good stuff, as well as like really talking through the nitty-gritty of how they compare. But at the end, I'll also pop up an infographic with like the very much like factual differences between the palettes. Here are the palettes side by side. The original has 36 shades while the new one has 20. The new one is also magnetic while the old one is not. Then here are swatches of all the shades that carried over. All of the mattes in the new one are existing shades from the original version in the same formula. 4 of the shimmers carried over from the original, and they are all duochromes but with better formulas. I'll talk more about the formula upgrade in a bit. So as you saw in the swatches, all of these mattes are shades from the original palette. They are the exact same formula as the original palette, and I did find that to be the case while swatching. They felt very, very similar, if not the same. But I will say that when I swatched these mattes against the original palette, a couple of them were just like a touch different. Not enough to be noticeable on the eyes. I don't think it'll make much of a difference on the eyes at all, really, but in my swatches, I think you can see that they are just like the slightest amount different. And not all of them, only a few of them. For the mattes that didn't carry over, I feel like it's a lot of these lighter, like neutral pinkish mattes that I feel like maybe it's just like a little too repetitive to have all of those in the new palette. And I know like this matte definitely didn't make it over, which I always felt was just like a little out of place. It's like very peachy and just like so different from the rest of the palette. That did not make it over. But then also the stuff that did not make it over is in the new palette, there's only one row of like grayish mattes at the bottom. And over here we have a lot of gray mattes, but you'll notice that none of the greenish gray mattes made it over into the new palette. The ones that did go over are the more like purple based or brown based ones, which I know a lot of people really loved these like greenish gray mattes, but to me, I'm not super upset that they didn't make it over, because when you look at this palette, the purple and brownish, more neutral gray mattes are gonna go a lot better with the pink mattes than these green undertone ones, because purple is right next to pink on the color wheel, so they're gonna blend a lot better together than these green mattes. And I am someone who does like to combine green and pink together. For example, the Secret Garden palette, beautiful palette. But I feel like when it comes to grays, I just feel like they're so desaturated and murky that they don't, like in my head, they don't go as well with the pinks as the purpley gray mattes would. And then the last notable matte that we're missing from the new palette is this purple matte over here, which I feel like when you look at the new palette, it's very much like pink, mauve, and gray, and it doesn't fully go into purple territory, and it doesn't have those green gray mattes either, versus this one, which is like a little bit of everything. Now when it comes to the shimmers, this palette is very, very different from the original in my opinion, because first of all, 5 of the shimmers are brand new. They're all multi-chromes, and then the other 4 shimmers that carried over from the original palette are all duochromes, but the formula has been changed. Hopefully you were able to see it in the swatches, but the best way that I can describe it is that these are sparklier, they are punchier, they are easier to work with. The old ones almost felt a little crumbly, but also more emollient than these ones at the same time. It wasn't my favorite shimmer formula, and if I'm being honest, when I used to reach for the old Smoky Glam palette, I mostly reached for the mattes. I wasn't really reaching for the shimmers all that much. For the other 5 shimmers, they're all multi-chromes, which the original palette did have one multi-chrome, but that shade did not carry over into this palette, and I think it makes sense because let me show you. So the multi-chrome in this palette was this shade over here, which is Imagine, which is on a pink base, and then it has this like blue reflect, and I just feel like the blue doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in this kind of palette, so I understand why it wasn't carried over. And it's not like this palette doesn't have any blue tones in the shimmers. In fact, this shimmer down here, which I'm wearing on this eye right now, and this shimmer over here do have specks of blue in them, but they're amongst other pinky, warm-toned flecks, and I feel like they just combine a lot better with the tones in this palette. The last difference when it comes to the shimmers is all of the shimmers in this palette are either duochromes or multichromes, but there are 6 like regular shimmers in the original palette. So the regular shimmers in this palette are this one up here, and then this, this, and this. All of them are more like your standard metallic type of shimmer. Now I do think that a lot of these shades are pretty repetitive because these 2 over here kind of have rosy undertones, and then these 2 down here are very silvery and cool toned. This one's a little in the middle, it's a bit more taupey, but quite honestly, they all have the same finish and they're all very neutral heavy, and so we definitely didn't need all these shimmers in this palette, and it's one of my biggest criticisms when it comes to the shimmers in this palette. That being said, I do wish that we had gotten at least one of them in the new palette because I do quite like this formula. It's very refined but still sparkly, and I feel like it's a little bit more toned down for people who want that on some days. And because I'm such a fan of layering shimmers, I find that shades like these make really good base shimmers to then layer more piecey, wet looking, sparkly topper type of shadows over. And going back to this palette really quickly, I would have especially liked to have seen one of those metallic shimmer shades in the place of this shade Pink Diamonds, because this is one of the multichromes, but I think it's the weakest shade when it comes to shimmers in this palette because it just does not have the same level of sparkle and shine or even shift as the other shades, and I just feel like I could have done without it, and I would have much rather have had just like a regular metallic shimmer in its place, and then maybe that would have kept the cost of the palette a bit lower. But I also don't know how pricing works, so maybe I'm wrong about that. And as promised, here's the infographic comparing both of the palettes. You can pause to read or screenshot at your leisure. So if you have the original palette, do you need both? That's really up to you. If you have the original palette and you don't care for multichromes and you really, really enjoy those green-gray shades, you probably won't find much use in the new one. But on the other hand, if magnetic pans are really important to you and if you don't super enjoy the duochrome formula in the original palette, then maybe you would really like to add this palette to your collection as well. And if you don't have the original palette, I don't think you would be disappointed in the new one. It's right up there with all the bangers that Beaute Bar has been putting out, and I'm I'm very, very happy with the new one. I do want to make a quick note here because the original Smokey Glam palette is currently out of stock on the website, and the owner mentioned to me that she hasn't decided whether she wants to bring it back in stock or not, but if there is a lot of demand for the original one, then she will consider restocking it. So if you are someone who really, really wants to get your hands on the original one for whatever reason, I would go make that known to Bella Beaute Bar. Now I really quickly want to do a side-by-side comparison between Smokey Glam Revamped and Morally Grey. I don't have swatches for this, but hopefully a side-by-side and talk through will still be helpful. So when it comes to the mattes, I do feel like when you look at the grays at the bottom of Morally Grey, this one over here is pretty different from the grays in here, but the charcoal shade is, you know, it's close to the one over here. I feel like this one is more, it leans more black and this one is firmly charcoal. And then this matte over here is far more neutral than anything we have in this palette, in my opinion. And then the bone colored matte at the top, we also don't have anything like that over here. And then the final pastel pink matte in Morally Grey is far more pastel than anything in this palette, which I feel like is mostly mid-tones and deeper shades. When it comes to the shimmers, there isn't a ton of similarities either. The charcoal shimmer at the bottom of Morally Grey is totally different from anything in here. I do actually wish there was a charcoal shimmer in here because I feel like all the shimmers in here are very pink heavy, but then we have the iridescent in the middle, which we don't have any true iridescence over here. That being said, this iridescent does shift, you know, pink to gold, which I think there is a pink to gold shifting shadow over here, but it's a duochrome, and this one is more of a true multi-chrome, so it has additional shifts in it. And then the eye shimmer at the top of this palette is just like an ultra foiled textured pink metallic shade, and I actually had a thought when swatching this palette that the shade Hypnotic almost feels like this shimmer with additional blue sparkles mixed in, because this is kind of like a marble pan. There are like flecks of blue in it, and when you swirl your finger in it and you swatch it, it has that pink base with the blue sparkles dispersed throughout, and it's almost like they took this shade and then added those blue flecks in. Lastly, we have the shade Indecisive in Morally Grey, and I want to compare it to the shade Platinum from Smokey Glam because they are like the same concept in different fonts almost. So they both have a layer of blue sparkles mixed in with a layer of more warm tone sparkles, and those blue sparkles are very intense and sparkly in both shades, but the shade from Morally Grey has more of an overt blue tone straight on, and the shade from Smokey Glam has more of like a soft teal feel to it. Also, if you're familiar with Shine by SD's Sparkle Lights collection, which is in this palette here, the shade from Morally Grey is a dead-on color dupe for the shade Lavish, and the shade from Smokey Glam is a dead-on color dupe for the shade Stunner. They're not at all the same formula because they are very, very different when it comes to formula, but color-wise they are the exact same. All in all, I think this is a solid revamp for Bella Beaute Bar. They really did take, you know, one of the biggest complaints with Smokey Glam, which is that it's too big and too many shades, and they condensed it down to a wonderful curation. For me, these are all the shades that I gravitated towards with the original palette, and I love that we have updated shimmer formulas because, again, that was one of my biggest criticisms with the original palette. And for me personally, mauves and pinks, plums, and even dusty grays like this that lean purple are, I consider them to be neutral. Like, I will wear a fully mauve pink look and be like, yeah, this is neutral. So this is definitely going to become a go-to, like, everyday staple palette for me. Although I will probably swap out this white shade over here for something else that is more up my alley. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope I answered any potential questions that people have in regards to how the new palette compares to the old one and also to Morally Grey. And if you have any questions that I didn't cover in the video, please ask down in the comments below and I will try to get back to you before launch. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I always really, really appreciate it. It is truly one of the best ways that you can support my channel, along with liking the video if you haven't already done so. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!